I didn't know that you grew up on a boat. Why on a boat?
It's really cool. It was like a junk, like a Chinese junk wooden teak boat.
Your clients are heads of states, but you started in international human rights before founding eGovern. What sparked the interest in digital governance?
We were really held back by our lack of technology. I couldn't have access to the global financial markets. I was totally secluded.
How did you get started?
The opportunities are endless. Moving quickly and identifying and seeing opportunity.
Wow. Build friendship, break barriers, create opportunity.
Yes, we all have a common anchor, and you're creating this opportunity for us to be able to anchor around something, because Alexia, in this world, we are being drawn apart from each other.
Oh, I love that. Welcome to Doers Defined, where our mission is to amplify emerging market heroes bringing positive change. Today, we are joined by my friend, Alexia Hefti, a Swiss-Canadian lawyer and global strategist, driving economic cooperation, trade, and diplomacy across the Middle East, Africa, and the Caribbean. Alexia is a special representative for the Government of Bermuda, but also engages with leaders from 10 countries, shaping international partnerships. Alexia co-founded Deloitte Canada's blockchain tax practice and served on the board of a Nasdaq-listed blockchain firm, and now leads eGovern, leveraging AI and blockchain to revolutionize government services. She is a trailblazer in digital diplomacy, and she's here to share her insights on the future of governance, innovation, and investments in emerging markets. We both met through a mutual friend, Tamika, who is the former NBA Players Union head, and we became fast friends. So I am so delighted to have you on Doers Defined today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
So I always say we'll dive right in. And I want to start by getting you to describe yourself. How does Alexia describe herself?
Alexia, I would describe myself as an energetic, passionate person, and I'm a ninja. So I do everything, and I do it very differently to a lot of people.
Interesting. So describe ninja, because that's an interesting word to use to describe yourself.
You know what? It's funny because we use that word in my company at eGovern, that we're all ninjas, because we always do things very differently to how we're supposed to do it, with the main objective being results, which means if someone says go to A and the process is A, we follow it. But if it doesn't work, we find 100 other ways until we can make it happen. And so I think, we bring a lot of value to our heads of states or ministers or government, because we break through all of the bureaucracy to make it happen no matter what.
Interesting.
Yes.
Ninja.
Total ninja.
Interesting choice of word. I like that. So let's talk about your formative years. You're Canadian Swiss.
Mm-hmm.
You grew up in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
And now you live in the UAE.
Yes. And there are many more steps.
Wow. So what fond memories do you have of growing up in Asia?
Asia was amazing. Hong Kong was amazing. You know what? I grew up at a time of transition, which was decolonization from the UK and to independence of sorts, temporary of sorts. And for me, memories are I grew up on a boat in Hong Kong, and I would trek off to the big city every day to go to school. And most of my memories are family and friends. Family, because we lived on a small boat. We were always together. So many incredible memories, always having fun, always being outside in nature. And friends, because I was able to cultivate friendships that, to me, 25 years later, they're all still my best friends. And so that's really defining for me. And it actually permeates through my entire life. Family and friends being the most important, whether that's, between us as people or between us as governments. It all comes down to that layer, of friendship. And it really comes back from Hong Kong and what my family created.
So interesting fact that I didn't know. I didn't know that you grew up on a boat. Why on a boat?
It's really cool. It was like a junk, like a Chinese junk wooden teak boat. So we had just moved back from Taiwan, where we lived very briefly. And we had the opportunity to move into Hong Kong side, where are the big buildings, big city. And I told my mom, I don't want to live there. I want to live where there are butterflies. I would have been 7 at the time. And so we went and visited one of our friends who lived on a boat at the time. And I fell in love with it. And I told my parents, we need to live here. They loved it. All of my brothers loved it as well. And so we ended up 11 years living on a junk in the marina, creating these, in an awesome kind of hippie community, whilst going every day to the big city, all the way at the peak, if you know Hong Kong, all the way at the peak to, a very prestigious school, which was completely different. A huge juxtaposition to the life that I was leading. And I loved that. I loved that and continue to live it.
So interesting. You have also had a fascinating career. So your clients are heads of states, but you started in international human rights and then worked for the big 4 accounting firms before founding eGovern. What sparked the interest in digital governance?
So it's a long story, but between those couple of big jobs, there were maybe 50 different positions that I did. I was doing all kinds of things. I had so many companies. I've done a lot of very different things, but I think governance and governments have really permeated throughout my life. I was already writing letters to heads of state when I was 12 years old in human rights, and I was advocating. And of course, those letters, I wish I could find them because they're so funny in hindsight. But, I was doing that. My dream since I was 8 was to work at the UN. And so, I worked towards that. That was the initial years of going to Uganda, working in international human rights and a field missions, being at the UN in New York, going to the Security Council meetings when I was in my early 20s about 20s, seeing, having all of these experiences, then having the opportunity to go to post-conflict areas and then end up working with the United Nations just by virtue of creating the opportunities and having all of these, experiences, seeing the institutions that I had, revered in so many ways. And then working for governments as well. So in law school, I had the opportunity, I was deployed by a government to the Middle East to do a monitoring and evaluation mission. And, working for different governments gave me a lot of insight at a young age. So institution organizations, International Criminal Court, all of these different NGOs as well, showed me a lot about governance. But the one thing I really noticed, especially because most of my work focused on the global South, it was very much focused on Uganda and Africa more broadly, but really the global South, is we were really held back by our lack of technology. And so I remember coming to Uganda, it was 2012, and I was banked in 3 countries. And then I couldn't get a bank account, and so, that's an impediment of sorts because I could not access my, stocks in this, I was investing since I was 18. So I couldn't invest. I couldn't have access to the global financial markets. And it was crazy to me that I was just, not even that far away, but I was totally secluded. And then engaging with government, engaging and seeing like, okay, there are these different solutions that have been created, like mobile money, right?
Yeah, M-Pesa in Kenya.
There we go.
Yeah,
we
transformative.
Exactly. You have these other solutions. It's like, okay, well, it's a solution. I mean, I still have to have a lot of cash under my bed, which is not ideal, but fine. And you see all of these solutions. And so when I went back afterwards and then had the experience to work with governments directly, and I discovered Bitcoin and blockchain, of course, suddenly I saw freedom for the global South, integration into the global economy. And so I started to put together my experiences of working with lots of different governments, all of the challenges, all of the problems. I still do that. And then seeing, okay, but there's a solution. There's a solution here. There's a solution here. And bringing them together, and essentially that allowed these countries to leapfrog, right? I mean, today, I was just at the World Government Summit in February here in the UAE,
which I saw you with Mia Motley.
Yes. Change maker.
Change maker.
Amazing leader, amazing woman. But being at the, surrounded by 200 ministers and lots of heads of states, I'm sitting next to a country, it was Uzbekistan, and they're showing me this digital ID system they have. And it was phenomenal. It's one of the best digital ID systems I've ever seen. And so I was looking at this digital ID system and I just thought Uzbekistan has this technology and no one knows about it. Yeah. And I asked them, do you export your technology? And they said, we'd like to, but people don't know about us. And so you see these countries adopting these types of technologies that propel them forward. And so that's kind of how eGovern starts to come about. I'm at Deloitte and I'm seeing governments do things that are still very archaic, using, especially in, the big four, they're using archaic systems when new ones exist that are cheaper, that are faster, that are more cost effective, that are more inclusive. And so at the time, because I was in blockchain when I founded eGovern, I was working with governments that were implementing different blockchain solutions using different protocols. And the problem was that if you have a digital ID system on one blockchain and then you have your land registry on another blockchain, great. How do those speak to each other? So the idea was create the backbone that allows them to all speak to each other, right? So that's kind of how it starts. And then from there, COVID hits and a lot of changes happen and we become more tech focused. And I'd had some opportunities to take on some roles with governments, and that's where I jumped right in, and I've loved it ever since.
Oh, amazing, right? Just serendipity in terms of just how everything falls into place. Always. And so, Global South, you do a lot of work in the Caribbean.
I do.
And you are the special representative for the Government of Bermuda.
Yes.
For representing the Middle East and Africa.
Correct.
And you were appointed by the Premier of Bermuda himself.
Yes. Premier Burt, David Burt.
David Burt, who you tell me is amazing. I would love to meet him.
Incredible.
How did you get started in this role?
I think a little bit of, again, happenstance, opportunity, but it all started with technology. And again, comes back to these emerging markets creating change very quickly and moving quickly and identifying and seeing opportunity. So if we go back to 2018, 2017, actually, when blockchain is bubbling up to $10,000, Bitcoin, and people are starting to notice it, I already had started the blockchain practice at Deloitte Canada. And so while we were trying to understand where can clients go, in which countries can they go, pops up a leader, Premier David Burt from Bermuda, who's a techie and an entrepreneur, one of the youngest leaders in the world. And he starts, not through me, but he's starting to understand this space and jumps right into it. World Economic Forum 2018 Jan, he's there. He's getting introduced to everyone. And by 6 months later, a regulatory framework is in place. And so, of course, I get connected by virtue of being at Deloitte, and I get, involved with Bermuda as well as other countries that were being pioneers. And that's where I started to, get very involved with governments who were trying to put in regulatory frameworks, and I attempted to assist to put in frameworks that make sense. So I've helped a lot of governments in that way. And of course, one of the ministers asked me to join the FinTech Working Group of Bermuda to assist them. So it was a pro bono. They had loads of incredible leaders in the space that came together and then would help. So whenever the government was trying to move something forward, they just show us, what are your thoughts? These companies, who are they? To make sure they were protecting the industry as well. And that's how I start developing that relationship. This is 2019.
Wow.
And then in 2023, specifically, Premier Burt says, I'm coming to the UAE for this opportunity, a conference that the UAE government has invited me for. And there we speak, and I say there's a massive opportunity for Bermuda here in the UAE and the GCC. And so we come together in reviewing the opportunity and put a strategy together on how we could build friendships in the Middle East. And that's how it all starts. It's coming back down to friendship with countries with which we previously would not have had relationships with, but that share a common thread. And for Bermuda, that was technology and excellence. And if you look at the UAE and you look at Bermuda, they're very similar, small countries, yet punch way above their weight, as Premier would say.
I love that.
You look at our reinsurance industry in Bermuda, top notch. You look at even what we've put in for digital assets, protected our industry, built a great industry with good companies. That's what Bermuda stands for, excellence. And UAE does the same. Now, what makes this friendship so exciting starting here is that the UAE, when it engages in friendship with other countries, it gives. And it gives technology, and it gives what it is good at.
It gives funding.
Funding.
Which is so critical.
Very important, but it also upskills you. It wants its friends to progress like it does. And a good example of that is the tech fund they created. A lot of their technology costs a fortune to develop. And so last year at WGS in 2024, they said, we are going to open source a lot of our technology to our friends, because our emerging market economy friends, our global South friends, cannot afford to build what we build. And that is a friendship that we can get behind. That is a friendship based on values that are aligned. We're pioneers together. Let's pioneer together.
Oh, brilliantly said. Now, Alexia, not everybody can walk into some of these rooms, right? You're usually navigating very high-level engagements with heads of states. I think you're managing maybe 10 countries, which I want to know how you do it all. What do you think makes you so effective at building strong diplomatic and economic ties across all these diverse regions?
So I'll say, I don't know how strong I am at doing this, but I'll tell you one thing that I always ensure that we do. And this is before we go into any meeting, before we even send a diplomatic communication to another country to have the meeting. What is the win-win? Align the win-win. I do not want to go into a discussion where someone is handing something to us and we are not giving anything back. It is not that every meeting needs to be a pro, but we do have to say, this is what we can offer and this is what you can offer and this is how you're going to benefit. And why is that so important? Because I represent a very small country. And so when the UAE, a minister, is taking the time to meet us instead of China, right? They're taking time away from their big trading partners. Or Africa as a continent. UAE is the largest investor now as of December 2024.
Yes, it is.
They're picking us over Nigeria. We're going to show you value. And so that, I think, and to me, that is a foundation of friendship in general. It's aligning the win-win. It's not always that I have to give to you and that you have to give to me exactly the same way. But I definitely want us to be giving to each other and moving forward together. And that is something that we take in to every meeting. So when we go into a meeting, we actually map it out. So the government on the other side sees, this is what we're offering. And then we have something to talk about because most of the time they don't even know what we're good at. So we show them.
Wow. Now, given your experience advising governments on blockchain adoption, economic cooperation, and increasing foreign direct investment, how do you see the intersection of digital governance and economic policy shaping the future of global trade and investments, particularly for emerging markets?
Tell me a little bit more.
So I think the nexus of everything that you do advising governments, how are all these friendships, like the UAE that we love, right? We're both here we believe in the GCC and the opportunities that are going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
How do we align a lot of the economic opportunities and investments and ensure that they're shared within emerging markets?
Well, it's interesting because I think digital plays such a big role in all of that and that's also why the relationship with the UAE is really so important. So when you think about developing the friendship and developing trade and developing, economic opportunities across different regions and with your new trading partners, it's hard to do that when the UAE excels at all things digital. They're very efficient. They get back to you very quickly, and they're engaging you at a level that not many countries do. And then they're trying to engage with another country where they see a lot of potential as a friend, and that country cannot keep up. And so that country is essentially responding too slowly, taking months to organize, is not have the governance capacity and the digital requirements to be able to create a fruitful relationship that will ultimately result in more businesses having access, more funding being allocated, etc. And what the UAE does really well, which is interesting, is that they, with their very close friends, there are about 30 countries in this program called Government Exchange Experience Program, where they actually have 100 sectors in governance where they help you build your capacity in government. So we had 20 just in November and in February, we had 20 permanent secretaries and directors of the Government of Bermuda that came to the UAE, paid for by the UAE, to help us upskill and get to leadership at the next level. We talk about technologies that we can use. We talk about technologies we can implement. They show us all of their ministries. They show us how it is to run a very effective and digital government. Now that becomes critical because it lays the foundation. Now you and many people who are doing business, you're not often thinking about why that is so important, but it is so important. Because if I lay the foundation for government to government effective communication and government to government policy making in collaborative environments that are very fast, efficient, and focused, what that does is it facilitates the ability to do trade, to do business, etc. So what you have, and an example would be, look at M-Pesa right now. 2 days ago, signs this partnership agreement with Fly Dubai.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now we can use M-Pesa and MTN and Airtel on Fly Dubai flights. That is not purely a business-to-business transaction because Fly Dubai is owned by government. It is governments that have come together and have put the framework in place to allow now people's mobile money to be used on an international flight. And that's incredible. And so the UAE does a lot of that capacity building and technology leveling. And that creates the foundation then for us to be able to set up the agreements that are necessary for then Airtel and MTN and M-Pesa to do business. And those agreements are the initial friendship levels that countries have, which is your bilateral investment treaty or your tax treaty or your MOU saying, let's be friends on these certain areas. They're very important because they set the foundation. They say, we're going to work together and maybe we're going to implement this technology together. The UAE is working with several regions in the world to export their digital ID solution, which is excellent. You use it every day.
I use it
every
pass.
day. It's very good. And what does that mean? Well, it means once the tools are being used in different countries, right? It's a lot easier to engage with that country. It's a lot easier to have commonalities and say, okay, you know what, let me help you here. Or, now we've got this sorted. You've got digital ID sorted. Now maybe we can talk about an aviation route and maybe all of your citizens, because we're using a similar system, we can create a way for maybe certain data to be shared, but not all data that will allow your citizens to no longer use a passport when they fly to the UAE. I'm making this up. But now because we have that platform that is similar, we trust it. We trust. And so these kinds of, systems that the UAE exports and that helps us to level up creates opportunities afterward that trickle down that you don't even think about when you're doing a deal or you're doing investment with Mubadala or whatever it is.
Thank you. Because I think what you're sharing, you're helping the viewers of Doers Defined to really understand and uncover the magic of what happens when you have good governance. And what you're saying is that a lot of the good governance that we benefit from within the GCC area, particularly in the UAE, is because of that digital know-how and advancement that they have in this particular area.
It's true.
Now, let me ask you, because every time we have a conversation, I'm just in awe with the incredible leaders that you're surrounded with. I mean, you are surrounded by very progressive leaders. And the one thing you will always hear most people, especially on the African continent, I can definitely say, like, you know, even in Kenya, where we're from, we're always lamenting about poor governance and sometimes, and let me say, terrible leaders that we have. By being exposed to these types of progressive leaders, what have you learned about leadership along the way?
Leadership can change everything. It inspires the people around you, and it creates and forges relationships that may not have otherwise existed. And I'll use the example of Prime Minister Motley, because she's an inspiration to our region. She's an inspiration to our world. And she is not that just in media, in the little clippings you see. She is that person day in and day out. And so why is that so important? Because, of course, as people, you get inspired day to day. But it also means that when she is engaging with other countries and with other leaders, she is also creating that level of trust and inspiration and people and forging paths for the tiny Caribbean that would not have otherwise been forged. So an example is that just last month at the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting, which is CARICOM is the regional organization covering the Caribbean region. And she is currently the chair for the next, 4 months left, but it's 6 months at a time. And it is the first time ever in the history of CARICOM that the European Commission came as an observer and participated. Ursula von der Leyen was there. President Orama of Afreximbank was there, forging new relationships. The discussions that were had around things like reparations would never have occurred in this manner before, because Prime Minister Motley and, of course, the Secretary General of CARICOM, Her Excellency Barnett, would have brought together these leaders to have frank discussions that now allow for discussions to move forward 3 months, 6 months, 12 months from now that are going to be transformative for the region. Afreximbank, President Orama, and all the delegation that was there. What that does is we're seeing increasing trade between the Caribbean and Africa. We're seeing Afreximbank setting up this trade facility just this week. They broke ground. You have all of these small things that occur from one leader who is creating this inclusivity, who is bringing these people together. You know, you have Ursula von der Leyen talking about Prime Minister Motley as her sister. My sister, my sister. You don't use that casually. I don't think that would be used for all of our dear leaders in North America.
No.
Right? And so you see the change that can happen. Technology is changing in the Caribbean. Opportunities are opening. I have seen, I'll say, country in the Middle East engage now with Prime Minister Motley and said, we want to do this, but only during your term as CARICOM chair, because they believe so deeply in her ability to make change. And I too see it. And so for me, the people that I want to work with, the people who I want to support, are the people who I see as change makers. This world, and you know what's going on, is devolving and going into what could be a worse and worse and worse place. But with the right leaders, and we don't need 100 right leaders, we could potentially turn things around. And sometimes my only disappointment is that the leaders that I support are not from bigger countries. In one way, it would hold them back if they were from bigger countries, because the truth is there's all that bureaucracy that's a nightmare. And they can move quickly. They can be nimble in their current small countries. But at the same time, they don't get listened to in the same way, even though what they're saying was either so far ahead. They were such pioneers. Think of Premier Bert and blockchain. And yet today, how many people remember that as a leader, he stood up when others called all of this a big scam? And all those leaders now love it. And all those leaders are thinking, let's put it in reserve. But these leaders are change makers. And for me, that's inspiring. And for the people of the region, it is inspiring because I hear youth come up. I mean, lots of things, but I hear youth say, I wish I were from Barbados because I want a leader like Prime Minister Motley.
Oh, she's inspiring. I mean, all over the global South. I mean, you listen to her YouTube, sort of talks like at the UN, and you want to just go out and execute on whatever she says, especially particularly climate change for me, which I really care about deeply.
Yes. Yeah. And then you also see when we were at Expo 2020, people stop her, young people, like 15-year-olds. Could we take a picture with Prime Minister Motley? And then you see, oh, they don't look like they're from the Caribbean. So her impact is greater than perhaps we believe. And I think that is really empowering.
So I think riding on that, because I think for Barbados, I think through Mia Motley, they've played a very central role in bringing, I think, Africa, the GCC, and the Caribbean together.
Yes.
From where you sit, and in many of those rooms that you're in, what are the opportunities, the sort of like big glaring opportunities that are there in terms of uniting these three regions?
I think, the opportunities are endless, and there are such innovative ideas coming out in these meetings. For example, you have certain industries in the Caribbean that are, maybe a specialized mango, let's say, in one country, or, coffee or whatever, agricultural product. When you're constrained by a tiny landmass like this, you may have a cool, amazing product, but you can't necessarily develop it into a massive export because there's only so much land. And then you see discussions happening with Ghana or with, Senegal, or just by virtue of now them being in the room before they were never in the room together. And then they start saying, well, why don't you grow it here? We'll give you X amount of land. Or in Latin America, they'll say to Guyana, we have a piece of land that you can use for growing this industry. For Barbados, we received an allocation to grow the halal sheep industry, because there's a special sheep in Barbados, which is the black belly sheep, that could be expanded greatly. So you see these things happening. A lot of opportunity, agriculture, pharmaceuticals as well. We saw a lot of collaboration there during COVID and at other times, but financial industry as well. In nascent industries of insurance on the continent of Africa, specialized in Bermuda. Great opportunities there. So honestly, the opportunities are endless. The main issue is how do you, one, get everybody in the room, and two, activate on that, right? Because it requires a lot of work to actually make these things happen. So getting in the room, it sounds easy, it's not. When you don't have a direct air route and a Nigerian has to come through the UK but can't come through because they don't have the visa, and then they actually can't get to Barbados, so Afreximbank needs to charter a flight all the way to the Bahamas for the annual meeting, it makes business a little more complicated. But what we're seeing, of course, under the leadership of some amazing leaders in the Caribbean, like Prime Minister Motley, is that drive to, okay, we do want to create all these avenues for business, but how about we start with creating the foundations? We need the agreements in place to protect ourselves. That's just a reality. When two countries don't know each other, they're not just going to suddenly say, let's put 100 billion here, or let's put 100 million, 10 billion, nothing. They're not going to do that because they need protections in place. That's the first part. The second part is let's put an air route. And what's really exciting is that now there's collaboration between Africa and the Caribbean to put an air route in to the Middle East. So they're coming together, not as one country, let's go talk with the UAE, one country, let's go talk with Saudi. No, institution, multilateral institution in Africa, a couple countries in the Caribbean come together, have the discussion with the UAE, with Saudi. And that's beautiful because now you're seeing collaboration. And that's going to trickle down. Every single industry is an opportunity as you build those foundations. And digital is a big one because you see a lot of digital innovation happening and being trialed in small island developing states in the Caribbean. It's a great place to pilot. We have many African companies piloting on populations that are 40,000 people, 50,000 people, because you don't really want to trial on 200 million people in Nigeria and get it wrong. But it's okay if it's smaller population. So you see a lot of technology innovation. And then, of course, technology innovation, there are incredible companies in Africa that have a lot of opportunity to build across the Caribbean and then leapfrog to Latin America, which is a huge market as well. And so I think, opportunities are endless. It's just a matter of ensuring that the governments have, the capacity to deliver on creating the foundation of friendship so that all of these businesses can then thrive. And then you get, business delegations, chambers of commerce, all of that. It helps create the environment.
What I actually took out of that was build friendship, break barriers, create opportunity.
Yes.
Well said.
Absolutely.
Well said. Now, in terms of digital and governance, because I think that at the heart is the tool that is helping all of this sort of manifest and come to fruition. You created a tool called Digital AI to harness the power of technology and diplomacy. Can you tell me a little bit more about it?
I would love to. Diplomacy AI is a super cool project. It came out of nowhere. And it came out of nowhere because we weren't planning for it. It just came out of a Friday evening hackathon from 5 p.m. to 3 a.m. And we created a tool that changed our work and that we believe is going to change diplomacy for the global South. So, as you know, I'm special representative of the Government of Bermuda, and I cover 10 countries. Now, that's a lot of countries. And if you look at most countries, they have embassies or Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We don't have that because we're not sovereign. So a lot of the work done by ambassadors and ministries of foreign affairs, we have to do, but for a lot of different countries. And so you're faced by financial constraints and you're faced by human resource constraints because all of this work is very lengthy. It takes a lot of time. And so this tool that we created, it was the first feature of Diplomacy AI, basically creates massive efficiency in diplomatic communications. Or from our perspective, communications for economic cooperation.
So for somebody who doesn't understand what diplomatic communication, maybe break that down.
Yes.
What happens because most of us are not in diplomatic offices. So what are they currently using?
Yes.
And then what does this technology essentially solve for?
So we're not using pigeons anymore, but it's close to that. You have to send letters called diplomatic notes for everything to every country. So for everything, I mean everything. I want to have a meeting with your minister. I'm sending a diplomatic note, which is a one-page letter with lots of information, but I just wanted a meeting with you. And then they're going to send it back and acknowledge that, yes, they'll organize the meeting and they'll get back to us on scheduling. And then that's one example. A more extreme example would be I'm expulsing this diplomat, for political reasons, or I want to start a bilateral investment treaty. All of that is written on something called a diplomatic note. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of a country sends diplomatic notes nonstop to other countries. And then their embassies also do that. So if we look at bigger countries, they're sending 60, 70,000, 100,000 or more diplomatic notes saying stuff like, my prime minister is arriving in your country on flight XXYY and will be accompanied by these people. It can be as mundane as administrative item like that to something very serious, to trade and tariffs, to anything. It is just the way you engage with a government is you must write. That's the diplomatic notes. Then, of course, as friends, we also write each other letters from heads of states to head of state. So congratulations, President Mahama, on your inauguration. Congratulations on your award. I'm so sorry someone passed. I'm so sorry an earthquake occurred in your country, and we will send assistance because you are a dear friend of 52 years of friendship. Whatever it is. Every single engagement is like that. And even if I know you very well, so I have the minister on WhatsApp, Minister, are you free on Tuesday? We need to discuss this issue. Sure, I am free. Please send a diplomatic note. It is a requirement to engage in this very archaic way. Now, archaic for some countries because they are still printing out every single diplomatic note, stamping it, scanning it, putting it back in. Some are faxing it, some are mailing them. It's a whole process. Now, at minimum, just getting a template and getting the correct accreditations, everything in diplomacy is highly technical and it has to be done according to protocol, which means it must be perfect. And you cannot make errors because you can upset countries, even by calling their country the slightly wrong, or calling a person slightly incorrectly. It's upsetting. So what the first step of Diplomacy AI did is it automated and using AI that entire diplomatic note process. So it takes what took me minimum 5 minutes, but on average 20 minutes to write a diplomatic note, make sure it's in the right format, right? Sure, you've got the templates, the stamps, all of that, down to 30 seconds.
Wow.
And anyone can do it. You don't have to be me. You could be your first day as an assistant in a meeting, in a bilateral meeting between two governments, and you would be able to just hear, oh, we should do an aviation agreement. All that person would need to write, aviation agreement, set meeting, Barbados, Turkey, March 6th, Prime Minister, and it spits out an entire letter beautifully written according to the format and the manner that that country sends diplomatic notes.
Oh, fascinating, Alexia.
10 seconds.
Wow.
It requires nothing. So it speeds up. So it's the tools that I started to use for myself that mean the diplomatic note process, the drafting is not even it's not even the worst part. The worst part is the process. It goes through emails and approvals and all of this and moves through email addresses. And then next thing you know, your diplomatic note is leaving 3 weeks later or 3 months later, just by virtue of getting lost. Or there are so many Ministry of Foreign Affairs are dealing with, if you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of these, it's a lot because you're also dealing with the ones you're receiving from countries. So the base level is that, but it's an entire tool that will accelerate diplomacy. So for another example is that on your congratulatory letter, it pulls up national days and it tells you, in 1 week, there is Uzbek National Day. Do you want to send a letter? Yes? Click. It auto-populates a diplomatic note and the letter. Then after, maybe me as the specialist would come in and say, you know what, let me add a couple of things we really enjoy our relationship working on the blue economy. And we'd like to advance these 3 items as well, because I'll know that in time. I won't even need to be there because it will pull directly from the database, knowing that our 2 countries are working on this right now. But the main thing this tool does is it liberates diplomacy for the global South. Because our countries, 150 countries in the world, have on average 40 embassies. There are nearly 200 countries in the world. That means they are not engaging in in-depth friendships with the majority of the world. The Caribbean has on average 15 to 20, 15 I think it is, embassies. That means they have 15 good friends. And that's not enough in this day and age. And you know that because suddenly your strongest trading partner out of the blue says, I'm going to slap a tariff on you, even you're my best friend. And suddenly you have to think, well, who else am I going to turn to? Well, it's really easy when you have, like the United States and China, 300 diplomatic missions globally because you have several in each country. So you have a lot of friends. You may have some enemies, but you have friends, right? While the other countries don't. And so what this type of tool allows for when it is going to be more and more developed is that it is going to allow for global South countries to say, you know what, even though my budget from my Ministry of Foreign Affairs is 50 million versus the United States having spent 780 plus million on their Juba embassy alone, our entire budget is this. Well, it won't matter because we can use these tools to leapfrog over these other countries. And now I can be friends with Tonga and Vanuatu and the Gambia, which I would not have had the resources to be friends with before. Just like today, Bermuda can use one person to engage 10 countries instead of most countries having a consul or an ambassador engaging one, maybe two countries, because they're using those laborious old systems when in reality we can use technology to move us and propel us forward.
Alexia, what transformation? Because I think what it does, you're helping us uncover the hood, because the public sees the inefficiency, but we can't really understand the reasons why. But what you're building is incredibly powerful. Now, with all this, with all these incredible rooms that you're moving into, what is success to Alexia? How do you define success for yourself?
Honestly, I'm motivated by my passion. And so success for me is definitely delivering on my mandates. If I am given a mandate, I seek to deliver on that mandate. That is certainly success for my clients and the people around me. But for me, I feel that I am day to day creating the success that I want, that I can always change it. It's always ever changing. So success is just, I don't know, it's just being, it's just building and growing and creating more towards the objective. I really think that we are going to see in our lifetimes. I think everyone sees it. The global South, integration into the global economy is going to transform everything. That is success.
That is success.
It is success knowing that the victims that I worked with in post-conflict northern Uganda, or the people I worked with at the border of Syria and Turkey, their lives are going to look incredibly different, and their children's lives are going to look incredibly different by virtue of the work that we're doing. Those changes that we're making, they're small, but they are going to have access in ways they never had access before. And that is incredible. So, success, like in any kind of career, it's not that interesting to me. It's more just driving forward on these mandates and creating this change. And I'm so excited by that.
And we are right behind you. I'm so glad to have you as part of this Doers community. So we have a closing tradition where we're intentional about asking, what can our community, and I'm talking about the Doers Defined community, how can it support you as Alexia?
Well, thank you for that. Honestly, I think we can support each other by understanding each other's needs. Undoubtedly, you have incredible people on your podcast. What are the issues they're facing? What's impeding their business? Because the issues they're facing, I may not represent that country, I may not engage with that country, but I know how to do it. There's a way to go about helping advance their mandates. And you interview incredible people. I want to be able to do that. And for me, it's synergistic, just like you align the win-win, as I said at the beginning. So just being able to meet your people who are part of your community would be huge, because I would immediately be able to see, okay, we could do this. Maybe, in fact, they would simply be helping me by virtue of, being an important investor in Nigeria or, Turkey or UAE. Well, that's going to assist us in our mandates, and we're going to be able to assist them in theirs. So I think what you've created is a very incredible, community. And it's about how do you bring them together so that they can help each other. You've already told me before we even started this that they are helping each other, that they're moving things. You don't even get included.
There's so many transactions
sometimes. That's amazing.
That have happened as a result of people just collaborating,
yes,
and feeling like they have a common anchor.
Yes, and that's it. We all have a common anchor, and you're creating this opportunity for us to be able to anchor around something, because Elsie, in this world, we are being drawn apart from each other. And it's so great that you have this community. And how do you leverage them to bring them together? That's you. This is all you. So I think that, we're going to rely a bit on you to bring us together, but undoubtedly I would be keen to be a part of any initiatives for you to do that, so that we can build greater institutions, business, opportunities, youth empowerment. Like, I know that they're all doing a million things, just like I'm doing a million things. So bring us all together.
Oh, I love that.
You're the center point. You're the sun.
Oh, I love that. That's a key takeaway. Alexia, thank you. Thank you for the incredible work that you do. Because really, it's magic behind the scenes. And if there's anything that we can ever support you with, please do not hesitate to let us know. And I am grateful to have you as a friend to share in the time with our sons as well.
Yes.
I think beyond the work, I think to really get to know what a beautiful person you are at a human level, and to also see you just unapologetically just brave a lot of these rooms that women aren't often in. So thank you for your service.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for being on Doers Defined.
I'm so honored. Thank you.